Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Welcome everybody to the Safina Society Nothing But Facts live stream. Today on Yom Arafah, which is one of the most blessed days. It is the most blessed day of the year. Of course, Laylat al-Qadr would be the most blessed night of the year. But Yom Arafah is a blessed day. And it's a day in which most of us will be fasting. And if you're not fasting, then you could at least increase some ibadah. And today we're going to turn to the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yesterday we didn't stream, as you must have realized, because we had a big event Sunday that ended way late at night, from 7 in the morning to 11 p.m. And when we got here, we realized the cameras aren't here. And then by the time we got them, because we used the cameras, by the time we got them, it was too late. Nonetheless, we had been reading the tafsir of Surat al Jumu'ah. Okay. And we will pick up from that, because that's all we do, reading. And that's how you're going to learn. Okay. I see some of you commenting on our logo rebrand, which that logo will be shifting around everywhere now, and we will be swapping it out, and it's a more sleek version of it, less busy, and it has the name right there in it. So that was the new logo, and just a little tweak. The old logo is a great logo too, but it's for digital content, it's a bit busy. And the old logo has a black and white, what's called in Islamic art and architecture, the jagged ablaq, but jagged, okay, going like this. And I loved it. I always loved it, but also at the same time, I thought it's a good symbol of the dunya, because it's black and white, and the dunya is good things and bad things. Dunya will always have good things and bad things in it. So, it was like the ocean that the ship is on, symbolically, is like the dunya. So, and there are some things about the dunya that I wanted to talk about. But firstly, we have to get back to where we left off in Surat al Jumu'ah. Okay. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. قل يا أيها الذين هادوا إن زعمتم أنكم أولياء لله من دون الناس. Okay. فتمنوا الموت إن كنتم صادقين. This ayah says, so, O you who have been guided, the Jews, if you say that you are the awliya of Allah and nobody else is, you say you're the chosen people and nobody else is, then why don't you want to die? Okay, so seek death so that you can go to paradise, right? You would want, if you know you're going to paradise, you wouldn't be afraid of death. Is that right, young man? If someone's going to paradise, heaven, he would not be afraid of dying, right? Because what comes after death is way better. Okay? وَلَا يَتَمَنَّوْنَهُ أَبَدًا. But Allah tells us they would never, ever desire maut. لَا يَتَمَنَّوْنَهُ أَبَدًا بِمَا قَدَّمَتْ أَيْدِيهِمْ. Okay? Why? Why would they be afraid of death if they know that they're going to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Simple answer. Their deeds are terrible. They betrayed so many prophets, so they don't want to go and to face the reckoning of their actions. بما قدمت أيديهم والله عليم بالظالمين. قل إن الموت الذي تفرون منه فإنه ملاقيكم. Remember, when you recite Quran, the ta should not have a whistling to it. It should be ta, dry ta. Should not have a whistling to it. Okay. ثم تردون إلى عالم الغيب والشهادة فينبئكم بما كنتم تعملون. Then you will be, whether you like it or not, okay, you will be returned into a world in which you are in bodies, and your Lord will judge you, okay, what you used to do. This is essence of the concept of religion, but in Judaism, they don't have a concept that you're going to go back, there's a resurrection, you're going to be judged. It's almost as if the afterlife is just like a maybe not. You know that in Judaism, that's how it is. It's not certain. It's not an article of faith that there's an afterlife. The way we have as an article or part, it's the essence of Christianity and Islam. There's an afterlife, right? And that's where all the justice. If justice doesn't happen in this life, it happens there. Okay. Right? And there's heaven and there's hell. But they don't have this concept. And I was shocked when I was teaching at Yale and a Jewish girl, I passed a sign-in sheet around and she says to me, "Can you just write my name?" And I looked puzzled and she said, "Yeah, because it's one of the high holy days. We can't use tools." Right? So I said, "Okay, I respect, you following your law." So we end up talking because there were other students were coming in, and I said to them, there's 2 Orthodox Jewish students, and I said to them, "Tell me guys something. The Maimonides, of course, Maimonides is the Andalusi rabbi. He's a major Andalusi rabbi from Andalusia, and he migrated and he became the doctor of Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi, and his nickname is the Rambam. The Rambam. You like that nickname? Rabbi Moses ben Maimonides, the Rambam. So he's their Jewish rabbi. So I asked him, he's a big deal in Judaism. He said, yeah, he has a lot of writings, mainly in medicine, but we consider him a heretic. I was like, why? He's like, because he took a lot from the Muslim scholars. He borrowed from the Muslim scholars too much. And he borrowed things from the Muslim scholars that were not... Did you type it in? Maimonides heretic? Yeah, see? So he borrowed too much from the Islamic scholars. He took our books of Aqidah and he basically mimicked it. And he said, for example, what is necessary for belief in God? What is impossible to believe about God? What is possible? And then one of the arkan is he said that there's heaven and hell. Okay? And Maimonides is considered a heretic for that. So I was like, what do you mean that heaven and hell is not part of your beliefs? They're like, yeah, there's maybe an allusion to it in the Torah. I was shocked. I was like, well, then what is the purpose of all this law that you do? All this sacrifice, all this essentially misery. It is miserable. You cannot tell me it's misery, young men. If you married a woman and she shaved her head bald, would you be happy? That's the law. You know that? If you cannot combine between your hair and a husband. Pick one. Pick one. Hair or husband. Yeah, so they have to wear a wig, right? But you cannot have your own hair. Are you telling me she's walking around the house with a wig all the time? And what happens when that falls off? For example, during certain marital activities that are naturally, physically involved. This is enjoyment. So for what are you doing this? They're like, just for being Jewish. Okay. Just to prove that you're Jewish. So that's all it is. Where is the reward for this? So that's why Allah is mentioning this. Is if you are truly the people of Allah, then you should have no problem dying and going to heaven. But Allah says, لا يتمنونه أبدا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا نودي للصلاة. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then addresses the believers. Because the first one was, يا أيها الذين هادوا. Those who were called Jews or called the guided ones. And in the past, they were guided. There's no doubt about that. Up until Prophet Isa, they as an ummah at large were on the haqq. As an ummah at large. But when it comes to their prophets, yes, they did many wicked deeds. And finally, the last straw was what they did to the Prophet Jesus, Isa ibn Maryam. So he then says, يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا نودي للصلاة من يوم الجمعة. If the call to prayer is given on Friday, okay, then إذا نودي للصلاة من يوم الجمعة فاسعوا إلى ذكر الله وذروا البيع. Why did Allah say, rush to the dhikr of Allah and leave off trade? Because the previous week, and Jumu'ah was not a fard yet on the Muslims. It was a custom that they were observing. Okay? It was a custom. In that custom, they would give a speech and gather on Friday. So it wasn't obligatory upon them. The drums beat, and in the olden days, when someone beats the drum, that means there is something unique entering the city. So they all go and they see what's entering the city, and they find a big caravan filled with khairat, raisins and different foods and things like that. And in those days, that would be sold real quick. Okay? So they all ran to get their share of the goods. Okay? And those people would come in, set up their stalls, and they would sell really quick. So they all left the Prophet ﷺ except the 12. 12 Sahaba did not leave the Messenger Muhammad ﷺ. And so the Prophet, peace be upon him, then said, if you had all left, this whole city would have burned. So next week now, Allah made it obligatory and specified dharul bay', no buying and selling during this time. Okay? Because also, it was a noble Sahabi, I think it was Abdurrahman ibn Auf, who had come in with the caravan at that hour, and he wasn't, there was no law against buying and selling at that time. So so he ate, he bought and sold. I'm fasting, I'm thinking of iftar time. So he bought and sold, and there was no prohibition there. So now the prohibition comes down. Dharul bay' dhalikum khairun lakum. Let's see now what the Mufassirin says here. وأراد بهذا النداء الأذان عند قعود الإمام على المنبر للخطبة. There can be two adhans on Friday. The adhan of Dhuhr and the adhan of قعود الإمام. You know that in my PhD, I did i'rab of everything. If an Arabic word came after of, I made it makhfud, majroor. Right? I gave it jar. So I wrote, for example, of Imam al-Haddad. I wrote the whole PhD with i'rab of like words like of, the word after it I made, if it was Arabic, I made it majroor. Like, for example, this was in the letter of Imam al-Haddad, I put Imam al-Haddad. Right? Majroor. And then there was professor there, Matrudi. He didn't like me at all. He did not like me at all. I think he's in like a Athari, Hanbali maybe. But he was annoyed the entire exam. I wonder if he's still around. I don't know. But he was, I think, a Salafi scholar. But he was annoyed the whole time. And he said, he looked over to his partner. He says, is of harf jar? Right? Are there non-Arabic words that are harf jar? So he made me redo the entire thing. I had to redo the entire thing. I also did i'rab when it was mudaf and mudaf ilayh. So anyway. So عند the adhan of qu'ud al-imam. That's the adhan we're talking about. So if the adhan goes off for dhuhr, okay, I can still buy and sell. I have to stop buying and selling, all right, as soon as the adhan of the imam comes, the imam sits down on the minbar and that adhan is given. Okay, we have some graduates from Sunday's graduation signing up here on Instagram watching. Congratulations, graduates. Yeah, they graduated Sunday. No, high school. Yeah, they're high school, summer school down the road. Okay. أخبرنا عبد الواحد بن أحمد المليحي أخبرنا أحمد ابن عبد الله النعيمي أخبرنا محمد بن يوسف حدثنا محمد بن إسماعيل حدثنا آدم حدثنا ابن أبي ذئب عن الزهري عن السائب ابن يزيد قال كان النداء يوم الجمعة أوله إذا جلس الإمام على المنبر على عهد النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وأبي بكر وعمر. In the beginning, there was one adhan in the time of Abu Bakr and Umar and the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They would sit at dhuhr and the adhan would be called. However, in the time of Uthman, kathura nas, there was a lot of people. Okay. Sorry, there was. Hold on a second here. Yep. There was a lot of people, so he established a second adhan. So one adhan to inform people that they could start coming in. And then the second adhan when the imam. So both are sunnah. The one adhan is a sunnah, and two adhan is also a sunnah. وقرأ الأعمش من يوم الجمعة بسكون الميم من يوم الجمعة. So you can say Jumu'ah and Jum'ah. Okay? قرأ العامة بضمها. Most people say Jumu'ah. But Al-A'mash used to recite it Jum'ah. So you can say Jum'ah in Arabic. It is fasih. It is Lugha Arabiya Fusha. It is a correct sound language to say. Dialect. And you can say Jumu'ah. واختلفوا في تسمية هذا اليوم جمعة. Why did they name it جمعة? لأن الله تعالى جمع فيه خلق آدم عليه السلام. Because Allah gathered the creation of Adam alayhi salam on this day. And Adam alayhi salam was created on that day, finalized. Or because لما فرغ الله من خلق آدم لأن الله تعالى فرغ من خلق جميع الأشياء فاجتمعت فيه المخلوقات. Also that all creation was finalized on Friday. Also that Adam alayhi salam was created and Allah gathered all of the angels and the creation to listen to his speech. Okay? All of these are possibilities, and it could be all of them together. That the day of gathering was always Friday, whether it was the gathering of the creation or the gathering of Adam's body or the gathering of the creation to listen to Adam's khutbah. The first khutbah of Jum'ah was by Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam, and the ruh entered him on Jum'ah. And Jum'ah was given to the Jews and Jum'ah was given to the Christians, but neither of them submitted to it. And they wanted a different day. And they called for their prophet to give them a different day. So they called for Musa alayhi salam, give us Saturday. Because Saturday is the day in which everyone in the known world at that time, that was their sacred day. So Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam asked Allah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, they can have Saturday, but they have to give me the whole day. That's the deal. You can have Saturday, but give me the whole day. They accepted. And as soon as they accepted it, they realized, it's too hard to do the whole day. So what would they do? They're not allowed to buy and sell the whole day. Whereas for us, we're not allowed to buy and sell for about 20 minutes of Jumu'ah, right? So they're not allowed to buy and sell at all the whole day. Okay? So what do? They put the nets in on Friday night, Friday before Maghrib. Okay? The whole Friday, from Friday Maghrib all the way to Saturday Maghrib, that's a day and a night. The night first and then the day. They can't buy and sell. So what do? Asr time on Friday comes around, end of Asr, they put the nets in. Because Allah tested them, and Allah has the right to test people. He has the right to test people's iman. And He tested them by showing them schools of fish jumping up on Friday. What? That's the rule. Can't buy and sell, can't fish, can't work. So what did they do? They put the nets the night before. Okay? And that's where all the hiyal begin. All the tricks, all the legal tricks begin. Because you didn't submit. If you had just submitted to what you were told, everything would be fine. If you had just said, okay, this is what Allah wants, that's what Allah wants. Discussion's over. Let's just keep it simple. All right? Take God's command and just practice it as much as you can. Right? But no, you have to ask and poke and pry and do all these things. Okay. Now, you're going to get what you wanted. You wanted to imitate the non-believers, and you wanted Friday, Saturday as your day. Ahlan wa sahlan, you got it. But there's a deal, is that it has to actually end up being the whole day. You accepted that. Now you don't like it. So if you had just accepted Jum'ah, you could do trade for the rest of the day. All that Allah asks you for is 20 minutes. But no, we have to complicate things. We have to make things more difficult than it is. Okay? And this is the Judaic temperament, is like this. The Judaic temperament, it begins with a mixture, a lack of submission and a lack of love in the heart that makes you pry for legal ways out of things. But when you do that, you actually end up making things harder for yourself somewhere else. Okay? Things end up actually becoming harder for you. And then when it's harder for you, now you need other legal loopholes. So you follow your nafs. You end up following your nafs. And that's why a lot of these reformist groups, they want to follow their nafs on a certain mas'ala, on a certain issue. They want to follow their ego. So in order to get from point around the prohibition, they have to go and do loopholes, do intellectual gymnastics. Well, okay, if that's what you want to do, if that's your methodology, now apply that methodology everywhere. Like when they don't like a hadith, and they say, well, who's in the hadith? Abu Darda. Oh, no, we can't accept from Abu Darda. Oh, okay. Well, then remove all of Abu Darda's hadith. See how many problems you're going to develop after that. Or it's like, let's say, forget a sahabi, they may not go there with a sahabi. Let's say they do that with a tabi'i. Okay? A tabi'i. And they end up going the same route with a tabi'i. Right? Otherwise, we got to remove him. Okay, remove him from all the hadith then. See how many problems that's going to give you. So this is exactly what they did. Okay. وعن ابن سيرين. Okay, firstly, أول من سماها جمعة كعب بن لؤي قال أبو سلمة أول من قال أما بعد كعب بن لؤي وكان أول من سمى الجمعة جمعة وكان يقال له يوم العروبة. In the beginning, it was just the day of remembering the memories of the Arabs, and they would call it the Arab Day, essentially, Yawm al-Uruba. And then Ka'b ibn Lu'ay, this is one of the great-great-great-great-grandfathers of the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ibn Fihr ibn Ghalib ibn Ka'b ibn Lu'ay. Okay. Then he named it. He is the first one to give an introduction to praise Allah, then say, ammaba'd. As for what is to come. That's what ammaba'd means. Also, some people said Sayyidina Dawood said that, was given that too. So, and both could be true. Sayyidina Dawood did not influence the Arabs. They were living separately at that time. There was very little crossover. So Sayyidina Dawood may have said it. وَآتَيْنَاهُ فَصْلَ الْخِطَابِ. Okay. فَصْلَ الْخِطَابِ is the split in the speech. So the first half of Jumu'ah, the speech is praise of Allah. Then you say ammaba'd, and then آتيناه الحكمة وفصل الخطاب. آتيناه الحكمة وفصل الخطاب. We gave him wisdom, but the more likely tafsir of we gave him wisdom and fasl al-khitab means we gave him wisdom and the ability to express it in such a way that separates the false from the true. So that's actually more likely, okay, to be the meaning of آتيناه الحكمة وفصل الخطاب. Okay. But Ka'b ibn Lu'ay also said ammaba'd in Arabic, and he's the one who named it al Jumu'ah, the day of gathering. And it was the habit of the Arabs every Friday to give a speech. Now, one of the reasons for this is that it actually helped them keep track of days, right? It helped them keep track of the days. It's very fathomable, very likely, in a world there's no calendars, no watches, no clocks, no nothing, no pens, no papers, no timekeepers, to totally lose track of what day it is. Okay? Now, the month, it's easy to find out that you're in a new month because you're going to see a new moon. You're going to see the moon on the right like this, a nice sliver like that. That's a new month. You see it slivering on the other side, that's the end of the month. So that's actually easy. But the day, I'm sure, I'm positive, there were Bedouins out there roaming around in the desert. Not only they're everywhere in the world, that literally, if you ask them what days, they have no clue. And if you don't have a deen that makes you do things like Surat al Jumu'ah, it is more likely for people to not know. We're different right now. It's pretty amazing how people used to live. People used to live. They may not know what day it is. They might not have a concept of the month. They may not have a concept of how old they are, right? Because they didn't have, if you don't have days and months, and you don't have record keeping, obviously, you're not going to know how old you are. You cold? A little bit cold? Here. There. Give you 1 degree up. So they were living around and they didn't know what day it was, how old I am, what month it is. All you know is the season. Now imagine this. Imagine you're in that time. You going? Okay. Take care of you. You come back? Okay, good. Imagine you go and you're living in one of those areas and you're traveling and traveling and traveling. And then you get up to Scandinavia. And the day keeps getting longer and longer and longer without you realizing it until the day is like entering into the period of time where it's 6 months. Okay? That period of time. Now, of course, that doesn't happen all of a sudden. It happens drastically. But just imagine the mindset of people. What were people thinking back then? And by the way, we don't believe that people were just dummies and lost. No. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has always been helping people. Okay? Always been sending malaika to give guidance to people, even in their dunya. Okay? And knowledge of the dunya is extremely important. I was just reading from Shifa al-Qadi iyad. The Shifa of Qadi iyad, he was saying there that the prophets they have absolute perfect knowledge of deen. And they have perfect knowledge of the dunya in general. Generally, the industry of fishing, generally the industry, like how does trade work? How does a dunya work? Why, he said? He said, we must affirm this because the prophets came to legislate the dunya, the use of the dunya. How can they legislate something that they're unaware of? They come to do da'wah in the dunya, so they must know the politics of the tribes that they're dealing with, which actually shows that a Muslim who excels in the dunya, this is something important. Okay? It's important to excel in the dunya because the sharia applies to the dunya. Where does the sharia apply to? To the dunya. You can't apply Bab al-Buyu'ah, the chapter on trade, if you don't know anything about business. You can't apply the commandments to da'wah if you don't know the inner working politics of the community that you're dealing with. You're just going to step on mines and blow things up and destroy everything, right? If you are clueless. So the concept and the idea that a person lock himself up and just study the deen day in and day out, this actually, Sheikh Zuhairi is against this. He himself, he had a law degree, right? He was proficient in a secular field, right? The field of whatever the Algerian law was, okay? And he recommends people be proficient in a field, some fields, have some worldly knowledge. You need some worldly knowledge because where does the Sharia apply? You apply it to the world. So, and this idea, and I'm telling you, I've suffered from it, many have suffered from it, of seeing people who just lock themselves up. All they do for their whole life is memorize the Quran and memorize fiqh and study and teach, but they actually never interact with the world. They end up driving everyone absolutely nuts because their perspective is skewed on everything. They're completely impractical, and probably because they put all their eggs in the one basket, and that mountain got really high, of that knowledge got really high. I'm telling you, some kibr gets involved. No doubt about it. Some arrogance is involved there, right? Because you're so much, or you imagine yourself, maybe you are, extremely proficient in one silo, right? And you don't even know how this would apply in the rest of the world, or what about the rest of the world. You just focus on one thing. And then when you measure everybody by that one side, imagine somebody who was really good at doing push-ups, and it's not so difficult within a year to, with your eyes closed, knock out 500 push-ups a day. Within a year. It's not unfathomable. Anybody, no matter how skinny you are, right? Your arms get used to it, and you get big and you get strong, right? 500 push-ups a day, easy. Then everyone that you look at, you measure them on their chest and their bicep, right? You're just tunnel vision. No. Proficiency in having some knowledge of the dunya. There are some scholars out there, sometimes you see the best of scholars is because they have perspective and they're doctors. And all those scholars with Shaykh Hussein Abdus Sattar, a lot of them followed his path. They're physicians and they're scholars. And I had not ever met Shaykh Hussein Abdus Sattar until last December, Umrah. And it's a funny story. I saw him. Someone said, "Oh, that's Shaykh Hussein Abdus Sattar." I walked right up. I said, "Assalamu alaikum." He looked at me and said, "Wa alaikum salam." And I was like, okay. I mean, he's really a big scholar. He's a doctor. I don't expect him to maybe have, you know, that kind of personality that's out there and bubbly. Next day, I'm sitting there having the breakfast. He comes up to me with a big smile on his face, and he said, "I need you to forgive me yesterday. Firstly, I didn't know who you were because I don't watch the internet," he said. "And secondly, I had the most massive migraine," and he has a migraine problem, right? "I had the most massive migraine." He went on and was so gracious and so kind and so effusive in his support for the work that we do here that I was embarrassed, because he's older than me. He's older than me. He's extremely accomplished, if you ask me. Someone who is a medical doctor, not just any old medical doctor. He's in his field. If all he did his whole life was just the medical field, he'd be accomplished, because he wrote the book. I think he studies diseases. Pathology, I think, is his field. Pathology. He applied, I think, like the taxonomy, the way of organizing knowledge in the Sharia. He applied that to the field of pathology, wrote a textbook, and that textbook now is the textbook. You don't go through medical school, through pathology, without reading his book in one of the classes. And I also heard that in his school, or in medical school, he teaches at the medical school, he teaches like it's a dars, right? He sits, he opens the book, just like we're opening the book, and he gives a dars, and his students, they love it so much, right, that at one point they told me like they printed t-shirts. It's like a little pathology cult because they loved his class so much. He didn't do it the way like many professors do it, just show a slide or show a video. He opens the book, so there's no distractions, just the book, right? And I even heard at one point they were sitting in a circle. So proficiency in a worldly field is extremely valuable. In some worldly field, there's no such thing as just deen, that's it. Okay? There he is. He pulled up. You know this book. Subhanallah. Fundamentals of Pathology. Usul al-Pathology. Usul al-Amrad. It's essentially what he titled it. I guarantee you, if you open the book, you're going to recognize like probably going to have the tasmiyah, the fada'il of the subjects, right? All right. The benefit, the thamra, you know, you can download the book. Just open it up. Yeah, let's see what the index looks like. The usul here. Chapter 1. Principles. Go back to the index. Yeah, there. Yeah, there. Stay there. All right. Contents. Chapter 1. Inflammation. Chapter 2. Principles of neoplasia. Whatever. Chapter 4. Homeostasis. Okay. Chapter 5, red blood cell disorders, white blood cell disorders, vascular pathology, cardiac pathology, respiratory pathology. So all the diseases of the blood cells, the diseases of then he gets to the gastro, the diseases of the respiratory system, all these. And when you look at it, it's just like, it literally, to me, has the same look and feel as a fiqh manual, where Roman numeral 1, boom, A, boom, boom. That's how it is. So, excellence in a field of the dunya. Also, it removes from people a lot of, feeling like you're useless, right? The feeling of uselessness, the feeling that you're not effective in life, that you can't earn a salary. It's not accepted. So that's why people think like ulum, I have to study ulum ad-dunya, I'm taking these IT classes and I should be studying fiqh. You can study fiqh, but you need to be good at a field, right? Be good at something. I read that yesterday in Shifa of Qadi Iyad. You never cross past a book in your house except you take it and just give it a minute or 2 minutes. Okay. I have to visit their center in Chicago. Yeah. Yeah. Sitting there. University of Chicago, I believe. That's where he teaches. وعن ابن سيرين قال جمع أهل المدينة وقبل أن يقدم النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم المدينة قبل أن ينزل يوم الجمعة وهم الذين سموها الجمعة. Some people say that أهل المدينة called it جمعة. أهلا ومرحبا بطلاب العلم. أهلا ومرحبا بطلاب العلم. وقالوا لليهود يوم يجتمعون فيه كل 7 أيام وللنصارى يوم فهلم فلنجعل يوما نجتمع فيه فنذكر الله ونصلي فيه فقالوا يوم السبت لليهود ويوم الأحد للنصارى فاجعلوه يوم العروبة. تفضلوا take a seat. كيف حالك يا how are you? Good. تفضلوا. So some people said we need to get a day to gather as well. The Christians gather every 7 days. The Jews gather every 7 days. We need to gather every 7 days. Saturday, Sunday are taken, so let's make it Yom al-Uruba, which was the day of Arabness, and we'll make it Yom al-Jumu'ah. Okay. فاجتمعوا إلى أسعد ابن زرارة فصلى بهم ركعتين وذكرهم فسموه يوم الجمعة ثم أنزل الله عز وجل في ذلك بعد. So that it was the Ansar that came up with this idea, and then Allah Ta'ala supported it afterwards. And Allah knows best which one of those is the strongest in the truth. وروي, as we continue reading here from Tafsir al-Baghawi, عن عبد الرحمن بن كعب بن مالك عن أبيه عن كعب أنه كان إذا سمع النداء يوم الجمعة سمع النداء يوم الجمعة ترحم لأسعد بن زرارة فقلت له. So every time he would hear the adhan, he would say, may Allah have mercy on As'ad ibn Zurara. I said, every time you hear the Adhan of Jumu'ah, you pray for mercy for As'ad ibn Zurara. He said, yes. لأنه أول من جمع بنا في هزم النبيت من حرة بني بياضة في بقيع يقال له بقيع الخضمات. قلت له كم كنتم يومئذ قال 40. Okay, so he's basically saying he's the first one to gather us in an area named such and such, and we were 40 people at that time. وأما أول جمعة جمعها رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم بأصحابه. The first Jumu'ah that the Prophet gathered with his companions. ذكر أهل السير, the people of the Siyar said, and that the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم لما قدم المدينة مهاجرا, when the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم arrived at Medina مهاجرا. Okay. المدينة مفعول به, مهاجرا is a hal. How did he arrive? He arrived as a migrant. He didn't arrive as a resident. He arrived as a migrant. It's from the mafa'il. Okay, from the mafa'il that describes how someone did that something. Okay, what we would call an adverb in English. This is a maf'ul. نزل قباء, he settled in Quba على بني عمرو ibn Auf, at the area where Bani Amr ibn Auf used to live. وذلك يوم الاثنين لثنتي عشرة ليلة خلت من شهر ربيع الأول حين امتد الضحى. So this was on a Monday. 12 days had passed from Rabi' al-Awwal. So therefore, it is the same day of his birth and the same day as his death, according to some records. Because if we're going to be honest with the matter, there is many different sayings of when the Prophet was born, alayhi salatu wasalam. But this was one of them, okay, and the strongest of them. And is also that it also was a Monday in which the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam arrived at Medina. Okay. And it was the 12th of Rabi' al-Awwal too. فأقام بقباء يوم الاثنين. So he stayed in Quba on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and he established his masjid in those days. Then between on Friday after Dhuhr, he left them. Okay. And while he left them, he left Friday morning. While the sun was up, أدركته صلاة الجمعة في بني سالم. When he was at Bani Salim, he was traveling through the area of Salim ibn Auf, all right, in the stomach of the valley, في بطن واد لهم, Dhuhr came in. Okay. وقد اتخذوا في ذلك الموضع مسجدا. They had already established a place for a masjid there. فجمع هناك وخطب. So the Prophet ﷺ gathered there and he gave a khutbah. Okay. So it seems as if this was part of the Arab life. On Friday, when the sun is up, gather everyone, give a speech. Okay. And this was their method of knowing what day of the week it was. So the months we know because, as we said earlier, you see the moon in the sky, right? So you know what month you're in. You know the month is beginning and ending. However, how do you know what day it is? How do you pin? So one day has to have an event in it that pins us to that day. And it has to be pinned to also something that's also constant, which is the sun. So it makes most sense when the sun is all the way up. That makes sense because everyone knows the sun's up, right? The sun is clearly up. The highest point it is where there's no shadow, literally. Okay? And there you give a speech. Okay? You give a speech about the affairs of the community. And then that will pin you. Now everyone could say, how many days since that? Right? 1 day passed, 2 day passed, 3 day passed. And if you have a group of people, you won't have a mistake on how many days passed. Okay? And so, you see, the deen of Allah Ta'ala also gives us a worldly order to help, and this is what Islam provided. A worldly order, a way to pin down what day of the week it is, right? What month it is, and all that. Okay, also the holidays, month of Ramadan. Month of Ramadan comes. Let's say you're out, live as a Bedouin. You may not know, is it Safar? Is it Muharram? Is it Jumad al-Ula, Jumad al-Thaniya? Or Jumad al-Ukhra. But once Ramadan comes, now you say, yes, we hit one full moon since Ramadan. So we're in Dhul. Now, we now have Hajj coming. And so Hajj will be another pin. So now we definitely know what month we're in. Once paper and documentation developed, then it was easy. But you have to imagine that a lot of people in the world lived in a world without paper, without documentation, and they lived out in nature, like the Native Americans. Their life was so different, subhanAllah. Their life, the way they lived was it's one of those things that if there was ever a historical time period I'd be interested to spend a year, it would be that. If there was one incident I would like to see, it was the flood, the day of the flood. Firstly, I'd like to see what humanity was like at that time, because they were ummah wahida, they were one nation, they were one people, they were not races, languages, they were one people divided up into tribes, but they were one group. And so I would be really interested in that, to see what that was like. And then how do you live after the flood? You come down and there's only what, 50, 60 humans on the earth? How ajib is that? Or the very beginning when there's also just like 100 people on the earth. Well, it's two. And then twins and 20 sets of twins and then one single child. That was the offspring of Sayyidina Adam. 20 sets of twins, boy, girl, each one. That's 40 kids. And then when Qabil killed Habil, that made it 39 kids, uneven. There's going to be a woman now who's not married. So therefore, Allah Ta'ala gave her a birth and Sheath was born. Sheath or Seth, or in English, Seth or Sheath was born. Returned the number of males back to 20. So that every single boy and girl got married. And then once they produced more than 2 offspring, right, then at that point, humanity is off to the races. Okay. And the population is expanding. Okay. I did hear from Maulana Anis. He put something up, but he removed it. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was a narration that he wasn't exactly solid about, but he did say that in Akhir al-Zaman, one of the problems of Akhir al-Zaman is that childbirth will come to an end. And then when everyone on the earth is over 40, then the Qiyamah comes upon them. So the Qiyamah does not come upon children and babies, right? But my question is then, what about Allah saying, وَتَضَعُ كُلُّ ذَاتِ حَمْلٍ حَمْلَهَا? Does not Allah say every woman who is pregnant will just abort their or miscarry their baby, their pregnancy? So I wanted to ask him about that. He took it down, so maybe it was like a saying or a narration that didn't have much strength to it, so he took it down. Anytime you come upon a book, and yes, I do mean a non-fiction book, there's two reasons why you should open it. Firstly, you're going to learn something. And when you open it and look at it, you don't have to read for a long period of time, at least for a section, a minute, a paragraph. Secondly, your Arabic gets better if it's Arabic books. Thirdly, it's a great contrast for your eyes from the phone. And people can be on their phone and screen so much that they end up not being able to read anymore. Like they can't stand the boredom of ink on paper, right? Like this has so many colors and movement to it. So people who do that, all of a sudden they find themselves they can't read anymore. So what's the solution to this? The solution is at least every day read for a minute. But you're never going to just read for a minute because your mind will start to adapt and then you'll start loving reading. By the end of a period of time, you'll be reading for a lot longer, right? That's what Imam al-Haddad said. Knowledge is constant review. عن ابن سيرين قال جمع أهل المدينة. We read this one. We read all the way here. Okay. وقوله تعالى فاسعوا إلى ذكر الله أي فامضوا إليه وعملوا له. Go to it immediately. No delays. No doing anything when you hear the Adhan of Jumu'ah for male residents who have attained the age of puberty. وليس المراد من السعي الإسراع. It's not does not mean a sa'i here like the sa'i of Safa and like running. Okay? And the sa'i in Safa and Marwa is walking. Only في بطن المسيل, or the area where the valley, not really a valley, but between the two mountains would dip. So when you see the green lights, those green lights demarcate where the valley used to actually dip. And they straightened it out now. It's all straight. So we just run ta'assiyan, taqdeeran, just imitation of where the Prophet used to not run, but move quicker. He used to just run down the valley and up. That's it. Now it's all flat. So he does not mean here, all right, al-isra', rushing. وَإِنَّمَا الْمُرَادْ مِنْهُ الْعَمَلُ وَالْفِعْلُ. What is meant is action for it. Now all your action, the only thing you should be doing is going to Jumu'ah. كما قال وإذا تولى سعى في الأرض إن سعيكم لشتى. So a sa'i does not always mean running. It just means movement. Umar ibn Khattab used to read فَمْضُوا إِلَى ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ. The qira'ah that he used to recite with was the lugha, the dialect or the harf was فَمْضُوا إِلَى ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ وَذَرُوا الْبَيْعَ. إذا نودي للصلاة من يوم الجمعة فامضوا إلى ذكر الله وذروا البيع. And that's also Abdullah bin Mas'ud's recitation. Famdu, it's go. Fas'aw implies movement quickly, but it doesn't necessarily mean rushing. وقال الحسن أما والله ما هو بالسعي على الأقدام. Allah does not mean rushing with the feet. ولقد نهوا أن يأتوا الصلاة إلا وعليهم السكينة والوقار. عليهم السكينة والوقار. So he says here, it is not the rushing with the feet, and we have been commanded to arrive at Salah in peace and in respect. ولكن بالقلوب والنية والخشوع. Rather, it is your heart and your intention that has piety and will and khushu' and awe and thinking of nothing other than Jumu'ah. Okay. وعن قتادة في هذه الآية, قتادة says, فاسعوا إلى ذكر الله السعي أن تسعى بقلبك وعملك. Sa'i is with your heart and with your action. Okay. And that is doing nothing other than going to Jumu'ah. Gathering your affairs so you can go to Jumu'ah only. كان يتأول قوله فلما بلغ معه السعي. And for example, Sayyidina Ismail is described as فلما بلغ معه السعي. When Ismail reached to be with Ibrahim at the age of Sa'i, means the age that he could walk with him and go places with him. So a child may not go with you to your work. A child, you just keep him at home when you go to work. But there comes a time when the child is old enough to now start coming with us. Okay? And that's what he meant by that. So for example, when do you take a child hunting? Hunting could be really dangerous. You may go out for 3 days without food. And then you may interact with wild animals on the way. You may have scorpions at night. You may have bugs at night that you're not sheltered from. So you don't take a child to that thing. You wait until they're like 10 or 11 or 12. أخبرنا أبو علي الحسين بن محمد القاضي أخبرنا أبو بكر أحمد بن الحسن الحيري أخبرنا محمد ابن أحمد بن محمد بن معقل الميداني حدثنا محمد بن يحيى حدثنا عبد الرزاق أخبرنا معمر عن الزهري عن ابن المسيب. It could be pronounced ابن المسيب or ابن المسيب. عن أبي هريرة قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا أقيمت الصلاة فلا تأتوها تسعون. If the iqamah of salah is called, do not come to it running. ولكن أتوها تمشون وعليكم السكينة والوقار. Come to it walking, and upon you is serenity and respect. فما أدركتم فصلوا. What you catch of it, pray it. وما فاتكم فأتموا. And whatever you missed, then make it up. Okay. وقوله إلى ذكر الله أي الصلاة. And we'll stop here for the reading of the tafsir. And we will pick up, inshallah, next Monday in terms of the tafsir, because we can go to a couple other segments. First segment is that what's going on out there? Who's yelling and screaming like that? Are they screaming from back here? From there? Okay. Next segment, Arkview. Starting July 8th is back. Classes are back. Shaykh Noah Saunders will be teaching tafsir for Arkview Plus. Arkview Basic will have kids. We'll have tasawwuf. We'll have fiqh. We'll have also Arkview Plus. You have Sharh of Jawharat al-Tawheed is continuing. The commentary of Jawharat al-Tawheed by Shaykh Usama Salhiyah. Okay, so go to arkview.org and sign up on Arkview and sign up for option 1 being Arkview Plus. Option 2 is Arkview Basic. Okay, so that's segment number 2. I want to mention that. We also, Omar, can you pull up our eye care center? Who was our guy? Okay, Ocean County Retina. We have students here from the Darul Fath intensive, so you guys can go get your eyes checked. Ocean County Retina, right? And so he's one of our supporters, and he has a successful eye care series of medical practice, number of offices where he sees patients, and may Allah give him tawfiq. Okay, now segment number 3. I want to make a comment. When someone pulls up a quote about a person that they find blameworthy, Is it fair for someone to reply and say, oh, that quote is from a long time ago? Is it fair? If so, when? Omar, what do you think? If I bring up a quote, let's say I bring up one of your quotes, right? Someone says, for example, oh, that's from a long time ago. And just so, let me tell you, because people brought it up with me. They said, Sheikh al-Bouti, you love him so much. Look what they said. And people do this with other shuyukh too, right? They pull up the quotes. Oh, you said this here. There it is in your book, blah, blah, blah. Your sheikh's book, your beloved sheikh, who you look up to, your elders. Is it fair now as a response to say, oh, that quote is from 5 years ago. That video clip is from 7 years ago. That clip is from 700 years ago. That quote is from 700 years ago. Is that a fair response? No, that's a logical fallacy, right? That doesn't change the fact of what it is. Because the Jews, they killed Prophet Isa ibn Maryam, or they plotted against him, or they feigned him guilt, or at the very least, they rejected him, right? Did all the Jews reject him? Or those who were living at that time rejected him? Right? Those who were living at that time. Yet all of you approved of it, and you never negated it, and you never broke from that statement, right? So you're guilty of it too. So likewise, when you can say, oh, that quote was from a long time ago, that only works if you retracted it. And in that case, you wouldn't care when the quote was. You would bring up that you retracted it, right? Oh, that quote's from a long time. Yeah, but I retracted it. People make mistakes all the time. The brothers you know why the brothers got upset online? Because it seems that I didn't give much weight to the idea of a scholar being seen with the oppressor, and it does give the image, and I'm not going to go into intention of someone like of people. We can't go into the intentions of people, okay? But it would seem that you are insensitive towards the victims of this oppressor. Can anyone deny that that's like sensible statement? Also, does not Allah says, وَلَا تَرْكَنُوا إِلَى الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا فَتَمَسَّكُمُ النَّارِ. Do not even be lenient. Do not even side with them. Do not side. لَا تَرْكَنُوا إِلَى الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا فَتَمَسَّكُمُ النَّارِ. It would be, do not relent towards them. Have some softness towards them, or else the fire will touch you. Okay? So, yeah, when people see a alim who seems to be on the outward, all we can see is the outward, is constantly next to or supporting or seems to be working with the oppressor at a time when he's oppressing other people. So yeah, is going to seem like it's pouring salt in the wound. That's like you are seeming to be insensitive completely. And what Sheikh Saeed Ramadan al-Bouti is not the only one whose stuff is brought up. Other people, everyone, some quote or something will be brought up. But the logical fallacy of that quote is from years ago, or that debate was from 100 years ago, or that's not the answer. That's a logical fallacy. Okay? The answer is, did you retract it? Right? Did you correct your position? That's the correct answer. Right? That's the correct. Sheikh Murad is here, King of the Caucasus, cometh. Where's that young boy so he can clean up? I don't know why we have this roll here. It's so weird to see that. And we have all sorts of bottles. No respectful place for Sheikh Murad to sit. You doing good? What you have there? Dalal Khairat?
No, Hizb al-Azam, Afghan by Mullah Ali Qari.
Mullah Ali Qari, mashallah. Beautiful.
It's a book of those. To read it for Arafah.
Mashallah. Did you finish it? Al-Khitam?
Not yet.
Why does it have an English title when there's no English in the book? Shay Gharib Jiddan. Beautiful. So Sheikh Murad, what we were saying is this. When somebody comes and brings out a quote or a video clip about another person, okay, or about a sheikh that you respect, or a sheikh that someone else respects, then someone comes around and responds to that by saying, that quote's from 10 years ago. That quote is from 200 years ago. Is that a valid answer?
I mean, if it's a quote that's established from them, and they haven't. As far as we know, they haven't retracted it.
Yeah.
It still stands.
Yeah. So it's not a valid response to tell me it's from 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh, the video clip is from 5 years ago. Well, that doesn't make a difference whether 5 or 50, because we said the Yahud, they took a position against Sayyidina Isa and Sayyidina Maryam. Everyone who follows the generations and lineages from them, who accepts that statement and does not negate that statement or break from those who made that statement, they're kuffar like them, right? Until you change your belief, right? So at that point, the correct answer is that not that it was from a long time ago, no, that it was retracted. That's the correct answer, right? That you retracted the statement. So that's a little logical fallacy that I came upon this past weekend, and I was just chit-chatting with some of my friends and colleagues, and they say, like, this is nothing less than a logical fallacy that you say, oh, it's from a long time ago. Who cares if it's from a long time ago? It's still in your books, right? Or if it's my shaykh too, it applies to me too. Do I follow shuyukh who are ma'sumin? I don't follow any shaykh who's ma'sum that I know of, right? Isma's done with. There's no one ma'sum. There's mahfudh. But we know the mahfudh only in the past. I don't know if he's mahfudh in the future, right? And there's no such thing as, the word ma'sum means he's impossible for them to commit sin. They do not disobey Allah by their intrinsically, Allah gave it to them, created them with that quality. That's only prophets and messengers. But a regular person can attain wilayah and attain the level of hifd, which means Allah protects them from committing sins. But that's like a description that we see after the fact. That's not a status that you can say, oh, he is that level, or he is this, that, or the other. We will say that after the fact. We can say that about their past. We can say that in the past 5 minutes we were mahfud from sins. I don't see that we committed any sins, for example, hypothetically. So no one's ma'sum, and everyone can make khata. So now the question is, if I have a great scholar that I love and respect, and a khata was established for him, at what point can I take his past knowledge, and at what point can I not take his past knowledge? That is the real question. So what do you know about? Is Sheikh Murad's mic on? Yeah. Okay.
What's the question again?
If a mistake is established for my shaykh, at what point or what level of mistake still allows me to go and benefit from that shaykh's knowledge, and what level of mistake and error makes me cancel all of his past knowledge, benefiting from his books that he wrote when he was at a time everyone considered him upon guidance?
I mean, I remember a quote from Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani, where he says that if your shaykh makes a mistake, then bring it to his attention.
Yes.
Or have someone bring it to his attention. And if he retracts, then that's good.
Yeah.
Right? If he repents and retracts, then that's good. If not, then leave him and continue to follow the Sharia. So I guess it would depend on the nature of the mistake. Was the mistake... So there's several components to it. Like, does he retract his mistake? Does he acknowledge it's a mistake? Because it could be he said something and didn't know what he meant, and it's just a slip of the tongue, and he wasn't aware of what the consequences of those words, and that happens all the time.
Yeah.
Was he aware? So it has to be understood. Does he acknowledge it as a mistake? What kind of mistake was it? Was it in the fundamentals of Islam? Was it in the fundamentals of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah? So the way I would assess it would be, based on these type of things, that, what kind of mistake are we talking? Are we talking about a mistake in the basics, the foundation of the religion? That's enough to, warn and to,
What about his past books that are authorized, that everyone knows are excellent sources of knowledge? At what point are we allowed to take from them, and at what point do we not?
Yeah, I mean, if the past books there's nothing problematic in them, and they're still beneficial, and they still have that knowledge that you can benefit from, and they don't contain any problematic things, then you can benefit from them.
Yeah.
And if you want to make it a point of, like a point of warning, or what do they call it, like desertion, you can let people know, just so you know.
Yeah. Disclaimer.
A disclaimer, yeah. You can make a disclaimer like, this book is from an author who today is saying such and such, although this particular book does not contain those things.
Yeah.
That's how I would look at it.
That's the right way to do it. Now, if you love that person, is that spiritual blockage?
To love that
To
person.
love someone despite that mistake, would we experience some kind of blockage?
I mean, if
In ourselves.
I guess it depends from what aspect the love is coming from.
Mm-hmm.
So, if that love is love for good, loving good for them,
Mm-hmm.
that they retract and that they, stay on guidance, and we wish for them to come back and amend themselves. That's what out of our love for them. That's different, right? I mean, you have people who are, they might have family members who are disbelievers and they still love them.
That's true.
And they would love for them to come back they would love for them to be guided, love for them to come to Islam.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it goes back to, what is the objective of that love? Is that love, you're aware of the mistake and you don't care and you're going to continue to love the person? I could see that as a blockage.
Yeah.
But you have love for that person but you want them to leave that mistake and come back to guidance. Out of your love for them, you want them to do that. Yeah. That's the way
That's a sensible answer, because we don't expect anyone to be masoom, and you don't have to go and defend every inch of everything that any of your teachers do or say.
Yeah.
You don't do that for your parents. You don't do that for your mother and father. You don't have to do that for the shuyukh either. And it liberates you, because I'm not cutting the shaykh or disrespecting him just because one mas'ala I'm going to part ways with him on that. And in West Africa, North Africa, they're extremely free in this regard. And I have seen, I'm not going to say names, two muftis. One is the shaykh of the other. And they're on a plane. And they get served the halal meal on the plane, and it's chicken. And one of them says, no, I hold the machine slaughter is not valid. Mm-hmm. And the other is also a mufti, right? So he said, la, shaykh, it's valid, right? It's valid because there is no nas specifying the necessity of the ittisal. So that means, like, what's the difference between a knife? I have the chicken here, and I have a long knife, and I cut it from there. What's the difference? All right, what happens now if I remove the hand, and I put a mechanical hand, and I just push a button? So mechanical, that's a machine slaughtered, right? So leaving aside that the slaughter actually occurs correctly, that we have to agree upon. But the use of the machine. So they differed on the use of the machine. So the sheikh said, no, I don't accept that. He said, okay, good. More chicken for me, right? Right? And he kept taking it, right? So they also differed on the salah in the airplane. Because one, the connection to the ground. Mm-hmm. This is actually a mas'ala in fiqh. Mm-hmm. So in one case, one mufti said, we make up the prayer when we get there, because it's not the conditions aren't met for salah. Okay. And the other said, no, we do pray. So they went and separated on all these masail. Okay. All these masail, they separated on these. Mm-hmm. But let's say hypothetically it was that's just ikhtilaf, really. That's not even khata. Yeah. But if we're saying a misguided error where you're actually doing harm to the ummah and emotions are involved, even that, we should be able to have a situation where we can say, I'm not going that route on this matter. He's still my shaykh in usul and aqidah and fiqh and all. You're still my shaykh on that. Like, we should be able to have an adult mind where we could separate between masail. And we do this all the time if you have a big family. Oh, I love him to death, but on this subject, don't bring up this subject. We do this all the time with our family. And some families are such that when you get invited to their house, they have to give you a warning, or they have to prep you, right? Okay, you're going to meet so-and-so and so-and-so. Everyone's fine. This person and this person, don't bring up this subject. I had students in knowledge going with to see other shuyukh, and they would say, do not mention shaykh such and such. Like they have beef with each other. We should be like that. And we should be able to say that for anyone in our Senate, if someone came up with a statement from Imam an-Nawawi that was wrong is wrong, right? That's it. We could say that statement right there as not right. And here's the thing. If there's ikhtilaf on it, bring people who are not connected. That's the thing. So what happens when there's ikhtilaf on it? When there's, no, I think it's okay. No, I think it's not okay. Well, why don't we then bring strangers who are learned? People who not from our mashrab, our center. Like in West Africa, they don't always read Imam Nawawi, right? They don't read Imam, you don't see in West Africa Imam Nawawi quoted for a lot of things, right? Why would they need him? For Sharh Muslim, they have Qadi iyad. Yeah, Sharh Muslim. For Shafi'i fiqh, of course, they don't use him at all, right? So someone could come and look, you're an outsider. When an outsider who has no reason to love you or hate you, and you have a lot of them, they're oftentimes the best arbiters on a matter. And also, the best arbiter on your own mistake are the people who love you. The people who love you, is the people who hate you, you know they're going to look for any mistake, so it doesn't count. If let's say some people, adversaries of ours in the field of knowledge and da'wah, they come when they say, oh, this is a mistake here. I'm not going to believe anything you say because you're looking for mistakes, right? But if my friends come and tell me, oh, by the way, you said this was a mistake, that is the best source of knowledge for me, right? The fairest, clearest minded. So that's how we should approach these things. When there is a fuzziness to it, there will be a fair arbitrator or arbiter of the matter. You're going to say something, my brother?
Yeah, my question was like, it's how about in terms of Aqidah when there is, if someone makes a qata and it leads to iman and kufr, at that point also do we see the same?
If it's a matter that ends up as iman and kufr, I think it's the same thing, but I think it's the same thing. The one thing that would be very clearly dissociation is the murtad. Someone who is a murtad in the sharia, he has no more huquq and he's wiped clean. It's a complete quality control. So we take his books, we throw them out. I don't care what he wrote, the encyclopedia of all of fiqh, we throw it out. And it's the only one that exists in the world. If he's a murtad, right? Maybe you would wait until see if he comes back. If he dies upon that ridda, okay, we throw it out. Because that's ahkam al-murtad is different than ahkam, or let's say al-mukhti' or al-mubtadi' or something like that. Okay. All right, let's start going to segment number 4, your Q&A. Nadira says that the stream coincides with her kid's bedtime, so she can never join live. I have a solution for you. AirPods. Most people who put their kids to sleep, they really benefit from AirPods. So kids can't yank at it. If you're holding them, if you're carrying a baby like this, they can't yank at the cords, right? So one of the best inventions that Apple has done, right? The only thing since Steve Jobs' death that was any use. The watch, no one cares. It's just a Father's Day gift, right? It doesn't change anyone's life. The AirPods change your life. Like, how many times you're allowed to listen to something, but you're doing something, and those cords get in the way and yank out of your ear? That's the worst thing, right? So the AirPods is your solution.
Is it AirPods or any wireless?
Everyone mimics it now. Any wireless, earbuds.
Or headphones?
Yeah. All right. Any comments or questions? Update of La Cocina. Well, you saw I don't know if you have time to pull it from the internet and show the pictures, but we did publish the before and after pics. Did you see them?
Yeah, they're nice.
Yeah. Published the before and after pics on Facebook and YouTube and all that.
You guys have a kangaroo skin on the floor.
Yeah.
That's been there
Sheikh Murad hasn't been here for a while because he had school, but he just noticed the kangaroo skin. So we do have some muhibbin in Australia who send us these things. And the whip, oh man. You haven't seen this. Show me this thing. This thing requires very little effort to actually whip.
This is very dangerous.
It will go flying, man. Watch.
This can cut people.
Oh, this can cut people. This would be haram in Sharia, by the way. To use as lashes. To use his lashes would be haram. Watch. Watch out another way. Watch how quick this thing actually. The whole thing will. See that? It's not like a belt where you have to actually put effort because it gets so light at the end, right? It gets so light at the end that it whips real quick.
This is gnarly.
Yeah.
You can go outside and test
It goes from thick to thin.
What was this used for?
Horses, maybe? Will we read Shifa of Qadi Iyad here? We should. We should. I was actually intending to bring it. On the section that the prophets, all the messengers, it is a necessary belief of ours that they did have certain knowledge, not dhanni knowledge, certain knowledge about matters of the dunya. Doesn't have to be the specifics, right? But they did know about this world. They were not clueless of the world. Okay. So, but that whip, I mean, security guard can hold it. No problem.
Where's the bow?
Huh? The bow and arrow? There, bow and arrow. Oh, no. Well, Suhaib, I think someone took it to tighten it. Yep.
There's a watchtower and like a guard on
You guys
Yeah,
have
from there.
an Outback arsenal.
Yeah. That's what we have, an Outback arsenal here. Okay, question here for Sheikh Murad. What is the best online website bookstore for Aqidah books?
Best online website.
English, I'm assuming they're
For
asking.
English?
Yeah.
The thing is, from my personal experience, is that different stores will have different titles. So you have like Al-Balagh bookstore and
Yeah.
others, right? Ismail books are, sorry, that's Arabic. I remember, I'm just thinking on the top of my head, Balagh bookstore for English only. The problem is, and I'm not saying this to like praise myself, but alhamdulillah, like I've weaned off a lot of English books.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why like I was selling them. But I think Balagh bookstore has a big selection if you're interested.
Balagh bookstore.
Yeah.
And that's in California, right?
I think it's in the UK. I think
Oh, who did we go to in California?
that was
Jarir.
Jarir books.
And what do they have?
Jarir
Only Arabic?
books they have a lot of Arabic books. Mostly I remember Arabic when we visited them.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure, but I remember they had a lot of Arabic books. They might have some English books like that are Arabic based, but
Yeah.
you know, my philosophy is that all of us need to. We're all at different stages in our Arabic.
Yeah.
But we should have the goal to wean off translations
Yeah.
and do our best to
Get to the original.
get to the original books in the language.
That's why the best translations are the ones that have the text under the Arabic, so you can actually judge yourself.
I don't keep an English book unless it has the Arabic now.
Yeah.
So the only way I'll keep an English book, for the most part, is like you see that right there, like Bidayah fi Usul ad-Din.
Yeah.
That will have the Arabic and the translation.
Yeah.
So I can use them both as a reference. If I want to see what the translation says, I can look at that. If I want to see what the Arabic says, I can look at that.
Yeah.
So always, I believe with the translation, we should keep the original Arabic text inside of it, even if the person can't read it, just for the benefit.
This
of
one has
another-
both, right?
Yeah, that has both
Yeah.
the Arabic and English translation.
Yeah. That's what it is. You got to inch away at the Arabic. In Arabic, you will inch away at it. It's not hard. It's just going to take a while because I've never seen anyone try hard at it, and eventually the door is going to break down, and you'll be reading all these books,
Yeah.
and that's the key. All right, next question here. What is the wisdom of the hadith that the age of the ummah is 60 years? Allahu A'lam, what we can. It's just a description, I would say. It's just a description, but it does have a fiqhi basis, though. The fiqhi basis is that it does give us an answer as to when we would give away the money of somebody in inheritance who it disappeared. If you go to abwab related to al-mafqud, the person who's been lost. At what point do we take his money and send it and give it out in inheritance? This mic is about to break. Our engineer, if you can fix that. Appreciate it. It's about to fall. Yeah. Just need to tighten it. Yeah. Okay. So that hadith does have that value. The average age of the ummah is 60 to 70 years. And why is that? Of the individual. It allows you to actually gauge yourself. So I'm close to the end. I'm in the end period. The end period is 60 to 70. Anything beyond 70 is extra time. Next question. Read me a question.
There's a bunch. It's not exactly any questions, but did we talk about the DH and Jawad debate yet?
No, I didn't watch it or see clips. Are there clips? Anything good?
I haven't seen clips, but I watched like a couple hours. And
I actually
mixed
watched.
opinions.
Oh yeah, what did you find of it?
I mean, I watched like the first few hours.
Entertaining?
Like Jawad, like always, he went off topic and he started bringing in like different things that weren't related to the debate.
Did he try to bring in fara'i things to embarrass?
He did. Like he brought in like theology and all these things, like
Yeah.
quotes from Imam and stuff that looked, outwardly blasphemous, and so
Quotes
he didn't
from
get
who?
a chance to. Sorry.
Quotes from who?
Just like different scholars of Ahl Sunnah, like just
Yeah.
And DH didn't get a chance to respond.
What was the topic of the debate?
It was a couple of topics. One of them was like slavery within Islam, patriarchy within Islam, different like
HRQ?
patriarchy in Islam.
Patriarchy,
like,
okay.
is Islam patriarchy?
Yeah.
Just stuff like that, like relate to that.
So I assume that he's going to go in and try to embarrass him with, statements like that.
Yeah.
It is a method of debating where you try to embarrass the person and show him that the things in his beliefs are things that will be embarrassing. Okay. What is Sheikh Nuh Saunders teaching for Arkview? He's teaching Tajweed for Arkview Basic and Tafsir for Arkview Plus. He hasn't said which surah yet, but he is teaching a Tafsir class that he's prepared a lot for. Can a Muslim work in a hotel as an accountant? They serve khamr, and he has required to maintain the petty cash vouchers of beers. Can he work in that or not? No, he cannot touch anything in the line of khamr or gambling if they have that too. Okay. I asked this twice, but I'll ask it again. Says Waqas Shaykh. What is your take on makhloot mahfil nowadays in the masajid? The ikhtilat is muharram and when the abdan are touching or would touch that closeness, that's where it's absolutely haram. That as for that which would be in a situation that would make you look at the other person or can tempt you to look at the other person, then you enter into karahiyah, discouragement. Okay. That's basically the ruling on that. And that's the answer I got from Sheikh Mahmoud Shabib. Okay. عند التصاق الأبدان تحصل الحرمة or التحريم. يحصل التحريم. When the bodies touch, like you're so close that the bodies would touch, that's where the absolute prohibition, we can say. But if it's simply that being in a similar space to the point that you can look at somebody, then it's forbidden or discouraged to the degree by which it's tempting to or unavoidable, right, to look at somebody. So, for example, the supermarket is a place of ikhtilats. There's people walking all around, men and women, right? So your job is just to lower your gaze. In the masajid, there should be a separation at least by a distance, if it's possible. And some masajid allow for that, and some masajids, their structure, the mosque, maybe it's not structured in the best way, shape, and best way possible, but they end up being unavoidable that you're going to be in the same hallway or same area with the opposite gender. So you just lower your gaze as much as you can. Sometimes some of the teachers, I know some older women, and they pass by, and some of their students from, like, let's say the Islamic school, and they've known these kids since like kindergarten, and then the kid becomes talib ilm, right? And then the teacher's walking by, and he just looks down and doesn't say anything to him. But that's like a type of ghulu, because if this is someone was your teacher, just like the age of your mother, there's nothing forbidden for you to say salam to somebody at that age, right? With that difference between you. So there shouldn't be that either. SR says it's 3.25 hours of drivel that just dragged. Talking about, I guess, about the debate. And there was also some post-debate drama coming from the Madkhalis.
Really?
No, Madkhalis are against. It's soap opera.
It's a soap opera.
It's
cesspool.
ISPN.
I would just get out of it.
It's ISPN. Don't confuse it with Deen. Let me just tell you this. Let's say you're watching that stuff. Do not confuse it with Deen. It's not Deen. It's ISPN. There's ESPN and ISPN. Islamic Speakers, Programming Network, right?
Honestly, like watching the debate.
ISBN, Islamic Speakers Backbiting Network. Yeah.
I think DH, I wouldn't say he lost at all, but from what I saw, I think he could have done a lot better.
Really?
And I think part of it has to do with his lack of usul. He doesn't really have a proper understanding of interpreting Islamic history. So I think that kind of worked against him in the debate because when Jawad was bringing up a lot of these things, he didn't know how to respond.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow, subhanAllah.
Because he does have those leanings.
Yeah.
So.
Interesting. Is it permissible to vote for a mayor whose platform doesn't include anything about Lig BDQ, but he's a left-wing candidate? The best I've heard about voting is that it would be permitted to if you were only voting for the lesser of two harms. What do you hear about that?
I heard the same thing.
Lesser of two harms, and if you don't vote, and permissible, that's it. So you can not vote at all, or you can vote for the lesser of two harms. If the lesser of two harms is known, at least to you, then maybe, I can't ever say incumbent, but it may be appropriate or encouraged for you to choose the lesser of two harms. But who's deciding lesser of two harms, right? Who's deciding that? It's a judgment. If you forget which rak'ah you're in, do you need to do Sajdah Sahw? You need to add one rak'ah and do Sajdah Sahw after the salam. Okay. Zinat Emporium is in Devon, Chicago. They're a good bookstore, and maybe they have a website too. Zinat Emporium in Devon, Chicago. Wow, Kareem Earl Reed III. He says he hasn't visited NBIC since 2015. All right, so we're now heading on 8 years. So come by, inshallah. A lot of brothers moved. There's always people moving in and out. Can ilm al-ladunni ever go against the Quran and the Sunnah? No, of course not. Never can go against the Quran and the Sunnah. Is udhiyah wajib to the Maliki? Sunnah mu'akkada. Sunnah mu'akkada. What is doing deliveries with alcohol? If you know what the delivery is, then you have a problem. You cannot do it. Okay? You cannot do it. If you don't know what the delivery is, you are permitted to deliver a box of the unknown. So every Amazon driver is not obligated to look in the box to see what's in his halal. You're delivering boxes. That's a permitted thing to do. So you do not have to inquire. Same in the Hanafi school? You don't have to inquire. Would I ever consider debating DH? No, I don't debate at all, to be honest with you. That debate with Jawad was not intended to be a debate. I don't really debate, right? But here's the thing. I can have a discussion with somebody, but I'll tell you what happened is that he invited me to give a talk. He said, I'm giving a talk on a subject that I know is very dear to your heart, which is the perennialist subject, like the belief in the Prophet ﷺ. So he said, I'm giving the talk, and there are going to be graduate students there. So I thought he teaches a graduate seminar. That was my first impression. I can probably go back and get the messages. And he said, come and give the opposite side so that they can get the full perspective. So I said, okay, I think it's actually, I have to go now. Right? Because he's given the talk anyway. So I have to go. So I said, yeah, I'll come. Send me the ticket and I'll come. I'll give the talk and leave. That's what I imagine it to be. That's it. And then he said, well, then we're going to actually invite the broader community to it. Okay, interesting. Next step, we'll have a discussion afterwards. All right. Next step, there's a moderator. I got like one thing after the other. I just kept saying each step was no reason to break from it. Last thing, I found myself on an online debate, right? But there was no need to back down from it, because this is one of the most, you're touching a nerve. For me personally, this subject touches a nerve. And the reason it touches a nerve is that I signed up for GW just to do the masters, knowing Sayyid Hussein Nasr writes a lot of nice books about Islam and modernism, not knowing this is his belief, right? When I got there, then they said, the MSA guys, they like wanted to make sure I'm not one of them. I was like, no, I'm not one of them. One of what? And then they explained to me the whole perennialist philosophy. See, back in the day, it was like a small little cult of professors. It wasn't a well-known thing, right? And only a few people knew about it. And they even went back to the Sirah tape of Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, and they said, listen to Sheikh Hamza in tape number 1. He says in the introduction, he mentions it. And he says, we have nothing like this in Islam, right? Two flowing streams of Christianity and Islam, 2 rivers of truth, blah, blah, blah. And Sheikh Hamza in the Sirah set says, they have this belief, we have none of this belief, right? And then they went on and showed me the books and showed me everything. And then they told me they have a dhikr session where they have a lot of food. They do a hadra. And then Professor Nafs gives a talk. And all the assistants, the people who get hired, are from that, group. And that's why you always, whoa, a big wasp here. Is that a wasp or just a... and then he said all of these professors look at who writes the forward, who's supporting the book in the back, and he's like, it's the same 5-10 names. They're like a group, a clique. So I was like, oh, okay. And then it would hit a nerve for them, because they lured a couple Egyptians, and one came back and one didn't. Lured a couple Egyptian students to become perennialists. Oh. So one of them came back and one didn't, right? And so that was something that was like a discovery, and it was upsetting at the time, like really upsetting and confusing. It's like, how could you love Islam so much, you love Sufism so much, but the Prophet, peace be upon him, to you, is not an obligatory belief. So where is this salvation coming from? Who is saying to you that, who is declaring that salvation can happen? And salvation from what? Like, who is saying that? Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's Fritjof Schwann. That's it. Because if I'm telling you, if we're talking about salvation, the question is from what? Who's threatening us? If Allah is threatening with the fire, then it is Allah alone who can save us from the fire, right? So where in any book, in the Bible, the Torah, or the Quran, does it say this? That anyone who just vaguely has some respect for prophets and is following the spiritual way, right, is saved. So there's no textual. They're very weak on the Quran. They're very weak on textual proof, the perennialists. But all their proofs are like this mystical experiences, Fritjof Schwann, and all that stuff. And Fritjof Schwann, at the end of the day, Allah humiliated him, right? Because he's like a false prophet now. He's misleading people. He ended up dying upon Native American religion, okay? And he ended up in a lawsuit because of having nude hadras. And then minors were in the hadra too. So you all get together in Indiana where he died, and they're doing hadras in the nude. And they like wear a face mask so you don't get embarrassed, but then you're in the nude. And then a girl, little young girls now. So Allah humiliated you. You ended up in court for sexual whatever you want to call it. Misconduct. Okay. And so that hit a nerve. Now when I came, and I always had good relations with Professor Nas. He knows my position. I know his position. And at that time, 9/11 had just happened. So any Muslim was sort of together, right? And we really appreciated him as that. And he's a Shia to begin with, then perennialist. And I'm like, okay, in the world of academia, there's hardly any sympathetic people. So we got along fine. He knows I don't take from him, and he knows he can't recruit me to this because I have already established in what I'm upon. So we had a distance, but very respectful, right? Time passes, and it's now 15 years later. And this thing, I start seeing it seep into the common Sunni Muslim, discourse. And it just like, I can't take it because they're sneaky. They don't come out and tell you, we are perennialists, this is our belief. No, they put themselves in as regular Muslims, right? And it's sneaking in there, right? Just declare your name of your madhab, right? We are perennialists and we believe this. Okay, no, you have to be sneaky, right? So I was just really like inflamed that how, some scholars who know better allowed this, you ushered this in. And you don't see the threat and the danger of this. You're just assuming no one's going to follow it. No, people could follow it. And one kid did become a perennialist, or not become a perennialist. He went from a Sunni who attended the Rihla at Zaytuna with me. Okay. 16 years later, he's a British Pakistani guy. 16 years later, became a Catholic here in Columbia, New York. Columbia University, became a Catholic. And I don't know what his state is right now. Right? Through what? Through perennialism, right? So in any event, that was my thing. And to someone say, well, I'm not a perennialist, that's nice and wonderful, but I'm also not a Hanafi. I'm not a Hanbali. I'm not something doesn't mean it's kufr, right? So to say, someone says, I'm not a Hanafi, or I'm not a perennialist, that's okay, that's all nice and good. But is it kufr or not? Is this doctrine kufr or not? That's the real question, right? What do I care what someone is or isn't, right? Just tell me, is it kufr or not? So that's the whole thing with the perennialists. And so when Jawad then invited me to this, so I want you to give your speech. He's not approaching it from a perennialist standpoint. He's approaching it from I guess it's an Ibn Sina standpoint. Or I don't know what the standpoint is, it's just a purely modernist standpoint, I guess.
Do you think his intention was always to debate? Like you said, he started adding all these conditions. Was that like his plan all along, or just kept,
You know what? It's interesting. I should probably go into the message. It's probably not Islamically appropriate to read exactly what the messages were. But I guess it was always a debate, but it wasn't come and debate me. Then I would have said, nah, I'm not, I'm not getting involved in a circus, right?
Yeah.
But it was in the beginning, I'm 100%. It was come give the opposite talk that I'm giving to the students. Mm-hmm. As if he has a graduate seminar and he's going to give them a talk, and he's being fair and giving me a platform to give the opposite talk. Because he knew that this was an issue that I wrote about earlier. So, but I guess I'm assuming that he did know and planned just see how far it would go. So, Chocolate Wallace says, I watched all 6.5 hours of the debate. 6.5 hours? What? What? How much raghi can you do? Raghi.
6.5.
6.5 hours.
It was comedy. One of the funniest part of the debate, like in my opinion, was when Apostate Prophet, that Murtad.
That Murtad, yeah.
So they have this nickname. They call him Apus, right? And so DH was like referring to him as Apus.
Yeah.
And then Jawad accidentally calls him Apus accidentally, and then later he apologized. He's like, "Yo, Apus, Apostate Prophet, if you're watching this, I didn't mean to offend you, whatever. It's not Islamically in the Quran. We're not supposed to call people nicknames."
Oh my gosh.
Then, what is Abu Lahab?
Yeah, exactly. You call someone a nickname so that it becomes known that people stay away from them, and you don't openly respect a mubtada for the sake of the common folk. There's so many things in the Sharia is not for your sake or their sake, it's for everyone else's sake. Mm-hmm. Also, if you look at the rulings of living in Dar al-Kufr, the ruling of the tahrim comes because if it's for your lineage, right? Because if one person goes astray in Dar al-Kufr, the whole lineage is shot. Then someone had to convert back into Islam. He will be absorbed into kufr. But if one person in Dar al-Islam goes astray, his lineage is absorbed in Dar al-Islam. His lineage is going to be absorbed in Islam, right? It's not going to be absorbed. His lineage may not follow him on some weird union. And we had that in our family. In my family, my mom's uncle was a hardcore communist atheist. Atheist, communist Egyptian. Right? But none of his lineage got absorbed into communism. They were regular Muslims. So 6.5 hours. And here's Chocolate Wallace says, Jawad brought a Quranist perspective and spun ayahs in a ridiculous way. DH called him out on the historical critical method, but let some stuff slide. Is anything productive in these debates? Right? I really wonder what kind of Islamic education that debate, the debate host. He's not a Muslim guy. He's just a, He's a Christian guy who debate. He's a host. I guess that's his business, right? It's sort of, I guess it's a fun business, right? Right? It's his business, right? The debate, whatever it's called. But this guy, I wonder how much knowledge of Islam he has these days, because he's hosted a lot of Muslim debates. That guy, the guy who looks like Hamza Tortsitz. Yeah. All right, folks, we got to wrap up. We got one. We have Celebrate Mercy, by the way, today at 5 o'clock. I wonder what time I'm up. I'll have to see. We got office hours. I have a meeting. We got a call. We got Celebrate Mercy. We got another office hours. Then we got the iftar at the masjid. So I wonder who's bringing up the iftar. So, all right, folks. Jazakumullahu khairan. We'll stop here and we'll go pray dhuhr. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله